Hi, everyone, and welcome to Is It Friday Yet? I am Jordan Campbell. I'm a career and confidence coach, and I help 9-to-5 professionals pivot into new industries without taking a massive pay cut. Today, we have Rachel here, and she's going to talk to us all about professionalism and conflict resolution, those uncomfortable feelings we all have, those icks that we all have. So I want to start off by the question that everyone hates in their interviews. Tell me about yourself, Rachel.
Yeah, it's not a big favorite of mine either. So the short version is so I've been working as an academic advisor in a top 20 university for the last 6.5 years. It's one of the industries that I kind of fell into. They actually called me and wanted me to apply for the position, which I thought was cool. I've won a couple of awards along the way, which is very humbling, honestly. And let me see, been married for a couple of years. I've got 2 rescue dogs back at home. My husband is absolutely a wonderful person and makes me better. I was a home educated student, which a lot of students don't know. A lot of my friends and stuff still don't know. And definitely a musician at heart. I learned in music school that I loved being a musician. I loved being a singer and pianist and all these things. But I wanted to be in a profession that's maybe music adjacent or arts adjacent, which is where I kind of landed in the academic advising sphere. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And congrats on all of those accomplishments and accolades that you have.
Thank you.
So I really want to get into it. And the first question I want to ask is, we always hear about, be professional, be polite, don't have the attitude. So how can one learn to be professional, and what does that even look like?
Yeah. So lots of people think of the word professional in the terms of professional versus amateur. Are you paid to do something, or are you doing it on a volunteer basis? Is kind of the distinction between those two. And in a very technical way, that's accurate. Somebody could, you could pay somebody $20 to wash your car, or 25, whatever it is now. And they are professional car washer. You could, talk about it in those terms. But at the same time, and of course, there's different levels of that. Someone who's a professional who's been doing it for a year versus someone who's been doing the same job for 30 years, right? There's different levels of professionalism. But one of the conversations that I have with my students, and I've had, with other coworkers and folks I run into, is there's another word in the word professional that we don't hear a lot anymore. And I think it's just terribly profound. And that is profess. We don't hear the word profess a lot, as in to make a profession of faith or a profession of love or whatever. And profess means, what are you saying about yourself?
Okay.
And so in the context of professionalism, what is it that you want people to understand about who you are? What are you saying about yourself in the way that you speak, in the way that you dress, in the way that you interact with other people? And this dives right into conflict resolution, right? So what is it that you're saying about yourself when you walk into a room? Another example is when I was probably 14, which was a rough year for everyone in my family because I was 14. I had no friends in school at all, like none. No, grew up in a Christian household, had no friends at church, nothing at all. And I was just wrecked about it, absolutely wrecked about it. And I went and just, kind of blubbering all to my mom and like, oh, I don't have any friends and nobody likes me, And she pulled me aside and she goes, Rachel, you are tall, you are broad-shouldered, you have a lot of things that have been given to you and you're just not making the most of them. If you assume, and this changed my life, if you assume that you are likable, if you assume that you are funny and interesting and have interesting things to say, then you tell people how to treat you. Then you will be funny and they will find you funny and you will believe that you are funny yourself. And she goes, and you know what? As someone who is tall, I'm 5'10", for women that's considered tall.
I laugh because I'm like, I'm 6'1". I'm like, I'm tall.
Listen, I so badly wanted to be 6 feet tall, and the Lord was like, no, we're going to stop you a little bit short of that. So
A little bit.
bless you in that wonderful height. And she said, you know what? People are going to notice you when you walk in the room anyway. So you better make sure that they like what they see.
I like that.
And I thought, oh my gosh. And all of a sudden I started thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to use all of this, 5'10" voluptuous that I have, and I'm going to use this to my advantage. And I did this experiment. And part of it was like, oh, I'm going to prove her wrong. Right.
As we do at 14. Yes.
Right. Of course we do. Right. Exactly. As one does. And so, man, it wasn't 6 months. And all of a sudden I was the most popular girl at school, and I was the most popular girl in church, simply because I decided I was changing what I said about myself. And that changed what it was that I said to other people without saying a word, but in the way that I carried myself. And I laughed at my own jokes because I think I'm funny. Right. And completely changed everything. Mm-hmm. So then the transfer becomes, how does that, I'm getting chills every time I think about this. So then how does the transfer happen between a personal story like that and then in the workplace? Right? Okay. So say you're at your entry level job, whatever, you're flipping burgers, serving coffee, data, entry, whatever it is. Okay. If you believe that the only purpose that you're at that job is to get a paycheck, well, then that's going to come across in how you behave.
Wow. Okay. I'm liking it.
Right. And so if you dress, and I have to remind myself of this all the time, I have a tendency, man, I want to show up in yoga pants and a sweatshirt and like not have to dress up. Right. It happens to be casual Friday, so I'm not as dressed up as usual, but then even following things like dress code. Okay. Well, lots of companies don't have a dress code anymore, but should I have my own personal dress code? Because again, that's putting on display something that I want people to know or believe about me. So this gets into, just dovetails into a million different things. Yeah. But in the context of professionalism, what is it that we're saying about ourselves? And again, that changes, may change from context to context. Professional in a Fortune 500 company in the C-suite, right? CEO, CFO, and all that might look a little bit different than somebody who is a professional audio production recording artist, and how he or she shows up every day to work. So a lot of this is context-based also, but I just keep coming back to, what is it that I want other people to know about me? And what is it that I'm saying about myself in the way that I conduct myself and speak and dress?
Wow. Okay. So I love that. So let me ask this then. So if we're talking about belief when it comes to professionalism,
sure.
Let's say, because we were talking earlier and I said to you, I'm a self-proclaimed introvert. So if I believe that I am shy and I can't talk to people, how do I change that narrative, right? Because we a lot of times I'm like, say your affirmations in the mirror, and that's great. I'm like, just because I look at myself and say it doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna believe it. So how do we take that belief and flip it to insert that into our professionalism?
Yeah. So I love that, because there are some things I can say all day long. Well, I'm a size 4. Right? I can say that I have blonde hair, and it doesn't make it true, right? Okay, it doesn't make it true. Those are hard facts that no matter how many times I say, oh, I'm a size 4 and I have blonde hair, it's probably not going to change on its own. Right. Okay. But in the context of things that are softer, right? The difference between hardware and software, right? There is a reason why those affirmations that you say to yourself day in and day out, it takes an element of time, but they actually do come true. The things that we believe about ourselves make as many, they say, we make our decisions, or our decisions make us as much as we make our decisions. So in that context of when I was 14, I really didn't believe any of this stuff. And it took about 6 months, right? And then all of a sudden, some other people started laughing at my jokes. I was like, oh, was that funny? I guess that was kind of funny. I started to relax, right? And and believed for a long time, well, maybe I'm just supposed to be an introvert, because it was terrifying to me. And naturally, I'm not, right? Naturally, I'm actually very extroverted, right? I'm married an introvert, right? And so half the time we go out and half the time we don't.
Right.
But in the context of some of those soft things, there's nothing wrong with being an extrovert. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert, right? But if you believe that to be a hindrance to you, well, then it probably will be. Or if you believe that to be your superpower, okay, well, there's a lot of really very powerful benefits of being an introvert. One of the things that my husband has that I absolutely do not, he has a way of picking up other people's emotions in a way that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
This is a skill that I'm trying to develop, but he picks up on them just like that, to the point where he will inform me, Rachel, it's time to stop talking. Right? Or he comes, we'll be at a party or something, and he'll let me know that it's time to go. He'll come and, he'll just stand next to me and he'll start to lean.
Right.
And that's when right, exactly. And that's when I know it's time to go. But it's very powerful, the things that we believe about ourselves. So changing those beliefs is challenging, and it's challenging for everyone. I think daily affirmations, even if it feels completely ridiculous, there is something to that, psychologically speaking. I hope that answers your questions. One of the other things that I have started doing with the things that I am uncomfortable with is actually physically writing them down. Right? Little sticky notes, the inside of, my bathroom mirror, my medicine cabinet, starts to look like an insane asylum because I have all kinds of things written on the inside. And there is also something to be said for, sometimes we have to act our way into feeling. My dad used to say, Rachel, don't make a long-term decision based on short-term feelings.
Yep. And
so the trick is, well, sometimes you don't know when it's a short-term feeling.
Right.
But if we believe, okay, well, I may not be funny now, but I will be funny later. And I want to be someone who is funny. I want to be someone who is sensitive to the feelings of those around me. I want to be someone who is aware of more realities than just what I have experienced. Well, then all of a sudden you start to see opportunities to actually be that person. And as long as you're cognizant of it and you make an effort towards that, it might take some time, but it does actually happen.
Okay. So in terms of, so you're talking about effort, and you kind of talked about this a little bit before. So when it comes to, let's say, entry level versus that senior level, and then we've talked about belief and professionalism, one of the things that you said that if you believe that the only thing that you're doing when you go into work is, so entry level, right? You said the only thing that you believe you're doing is going in there, getting a paycheck and going home, right? So what is, in terms of that belief and that professionalism, how can one change that from that entry level perspective to, like you were saying, C-suite, where the belief has to be a little bit deeper than, I just, I go to work and I come home.
Yeah. So passion plays a really huge part into that. Of course, we have all had those jobs, right? Myself included. We've all had those jobs where it's like, listen, I would not be in this job any longer than I absolutely have to be. This is not where I want to spend my life. This is not like what I want to be, who I want to be, right? Okay, so there's that. But in the context of only wanting to do the bare minimum for as long as possible, with no intent or desire to change that, that's when we start to move into the unprofessional area.
Gotcha.
Right? So someone who is the CEO of something, clearly they have a passion and a desire in a perfect world. And I think this is the case for most CEOs. They have a passion and a desire to actually be involved with that company. They believe in the mission statement and the value statement of that company. Or if they didn't, they would be somewhere else. So, there are many differences between, what professionalism looks like at an entry level versus a CEO level. But at the same time, there are some principles that run the same. What is it that you're saying about yourself? Are you generally speaking polite and gracious and willing to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody in an entry-level position makes a rookie mistake, okay, well, it's actually the responsibility of the manager, the supervisor, whatever, to
Mm-hmm.
extend some grace. Hey, listen, you've only been here a month. You've only been here 6 months or whatever it is. It's a really rookie mistake. We all made them.
Right.
You know, versus if a CEO makes a rookie mistake, okay, that's unprofessional. You should have known better. You've been doing this too long. So you see the difference there. And again, lots of that is context based. Mm-hmm. But there are a number of threads that are very, very much the same. The principles are very the same, regardless of position in a company.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense, because I think you talked about professionalism in like this very umbrella way, because you talked about, feeling it, you talked about looking the part, you talked about speaking the part. And this is where I want to get, in terms of speaking, this is where I really want to get into conflict resolution, because a lot of times, especially, us introverts, I will say it, I run from conflict. I don't want to do it. Yeah. I will do it if I have to, but I don't like it.
Right.
And the professional in me is like, okay, I know that I have to deal with this, but like I'm not even gonna say the non-professional, but the other me is like, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. So how do you gain a skill set in conflict resolution without, saying, well, I need practice, so I'm going to go start something, don't
do that
skill set.
Right. So I don't necessarily see conflict resolution as being a skill set to begin with. Okay. I think communication is a skill set that can be developed. Some people are better at communication than others. I was one of those people. I have to very consistently be working on my communication. It doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. Mm-hmm. But if you see conflict resolution instead as a posture, it's a position that you take. My inclination, I can be such a bulldozer at work when I'm working with students. I get frustrated. I get maxed out very easily. And I just want to be done with it. And it's like, well, in an academic advising situation, or literally any position in the education field and many other fields, that's really just not okay. So my tendency is definitely to what my husband calls hammer time. Where I just want to like bring down the hammer, and you know what, this is what I think about you, and this is, and I don't care, and the horse that you rode in on, and all this other stuff, right? And that's like, that's a lot of conflict without a whole lot of resolution.
Where I'm like, oh no,
right? But all of a sudden, when I started taking on this posture of maybe I had a misunderstanding, maybe I'm the person who's at fault here. And I assume that I'm the person who was wrong, even if I know I'm not. Okay. But that happens a lot more than you might think. It's like, oh no, I definitely misread that. But as soon as I take on that posture of, I need to listen better. I need to be more attentive. I need to dig deeper into not just what this person is saying, but how they're saying it.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is another thing. Well, this is another thing that introverts are very good at, tend to be deeply empathetic people. And so the active listening part, that's a skill set that I've had to develop, right, in this job. But as soon as you start to assume, even in a bodily kind of physical way, listen, we have had a miscommunication somewhere, and I'm gonna just assume that it's my fault. Would you mind going over this for me and tell me what your understanding is? Because this is my understanding, and it's like you serve up to them in this way. This is my perspective. This is what I believe happened. I'll be the first one to say I might be wrong. So would you please tell me what your perspective is, and can we work this out? Because I value you as a human being. I value this job. I value this opportunity, whatever. And then you shut up. right? And you just let them talk.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, and I've tested this with some of my students. Immediately, I ask them, "How does that make you feel?"
Mm-hmm.
When I come to you with this position of, I'm really sorry, even if I don't say the words "I'm sorry," even if I don't
Mm-hmm.
apologize, because sometimes you may not have anything to apologize for because you
Right.
were the person in the right. But as soon as you approach them saying, "Listen, I may have misunderstood something. I may have misunderstood something.
Mm-hmm.
Would you care to share with me what your perspective is?" And when I ask them how that makes them feel, there's a physical reaction. Because they've come to me with this position with their roommate or a faculty member or their mom or whatever it is, right? And they're all up like this, and you can't see their neck anymore,
That's
right? Right? And immediately you just see the relief, right? They relax and they go, "Oh, well, that doesn't seem so bad." And it's exactly the same in the workplace. It really is exactly the same. Now, do we all have jerks that we work with that no matter how hard we try, they're just going to be a horse's ankle? Like, yes, we do. That's true. But my conscience is going to, and I have some of these people that I work with. But my conscience is going to be clear because I did everything in my power. That's my boundary. I did everything in my power to approach them in humility and meekness, even if I'm right, even if I know I'm right. Objectively, I'm right. But I do value that relationship because we do work in the same place or we take the same class or whatever. And so I am going to do everything that I can to go in person. This is not over the phone, if at all possible. This is definitely not anything that involves written text, email, text messages, whatever. But to go in person to that person and ask, what am I missing here? How can I make this right with you?
Yeah. It seems like in that context, like you're being quote unquote the bigger person and going to them, and it might not, I guess outside looking in, it seems like you're being the bigger person. And even if you are right, you're going to them and you're being like, "Hey, how can we fix this? How can we resolve this issue?" And I know for a fact, like some of the people, when I work with people, it's when it comes to conflict resolution, it can be on one end, like you, if you're an extrovert, maybe you're the one that has to come to the table with, you have to come to the table kind of lessening like that bulldozing mentality versus where you're introverted and you have to come to the table with maybe just a little bit more confidence, whether you're right or you're wrong. So I think I think that distinction that you made is super important. And so when you're coming to the table and you're almost kind of taking responsibility, whether you're right or you're wrong, in your opinion, what are some of the most common causes of conflict in the workplace?
Yeah.
And then how can we resolve them?
Yeah. A lot of it really just comes from miscommunication. It really does. Especially in an office kind of 9 to 5, context. I do way more communicating via email than I do in person. There are people that I have worked with for the last 6.5 years that I've emailed with them hundreds of times. I've seen them once. We've had an in-person conversation once, right? Some of them, I've never officially shaken their hand, right? We email all the time, right? So a big part of that is miscommunication. Sometimes it really does come down to, people just being lazy, people being the first person to say, "Well, that's not my job." Okay, well, we're down a position and everyone's kind of pulling their weight, their plus some, and it'd be really great if you'd be more of a team player. And they just refuse. Okay, well, that's part of it. Another big one is actually gossip. Gossip is really huge. Rumors.
Oof, we could talk about that all day.
We really could, because what ends up happening is eventually it does get back to the person responsible or the person involved, and by the time it does, it's a total fairy tale. So then Right. It's the classic game of telephone, right? Which is why that game is like done in schools. So people kind of get the idea what you say to somebody is not the same by the time it gets to the fourth, fifth, sixth person, sixth person. So I would say gossip is a really, it's just so detrimental. If it doesn't involve you, it's not worth repeating. If it doesn't directly affect you, it's not worth repeating. Listen to somebody. Like, I don't have a responsibility to shut them down, but like the buck stops here, right? I don't have to spread that. What they do is up to them, but I'm not going to participate in something that is genuinely not helpful or encouraging or a benefit to anybody. Right.
Okay. So now, because this is a topic I'm like, ooh, okay. So, so when it comes to so let's say, for example, the gossip thing, and that's a common cause of conflict.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
How do we, let's say, we hear some gossip either about us or someone else. And you said one of the ways to just stop it in its tracks is to, like, if it's not about you, cool, let it ride, right? But let's say it is about you. How do we resolve that conflict professionally without it blowing up into this whole thing? And now, people are like, oh, something's going on, such and such a unprofessional, such and, all of it. And it becomes this whole office, workplace politics
drama
thing.
Oh gosh. That's a really great question. And I just recently lived through that, actually. Because it was about me, and somebody, I guess their perspective was that they were doing me a favor and letting me know what was going around the office. Right. I thanked this person for telling me, because even if in this particular context, it really wasn't about me. It was about a student and what the student had said about me. It was really about the student, right? So, but in that context, I thanked that person. Hey, thanks for telling me, because they believe that they're doing the right thing and letting me know, right? And I left it alone, because it actually really wasn't about me. It was about the student and what the student made our conversation to be something that it wasn't. And I knew what I had said and have documentation, and the student knows that what they were generating about me wasn't true. So I'm not going to pursue the student, right, and say, oh, well, that's a lie, and it was a lie, right? I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. I know in other contexts, that's really not the right thing to do. That's really not the right thing to do. We have to be careful when someone comes and tells us a rumor that's going around. We really have to be careful if we make the decision to defend ourselves, because that very quickly either looks like it's legitimate, right? As soon as we saying, oh no, I didn't, like, makes you just makes you look guilty, right?
Yep.
So, but I would start by thanking the person, right? Hey, you know what? Thanks for telling me. And I would actually not talk to them about it any further, because they are part of the gossip mill. And as soon as you defend yourself to them, as soon as you engage with them on that thing, what's the next thing that they're going to do?
Go off and
exactly. And it just keeps it going. It just keeps it going. So as much as possible, I would not give them any more information, even if they mean well. And they probably do. But even if they mean well, I would neither confirm nor deny a single thing. You know what? I'm really glad that you told me that. I'm going to see what I can do about that. And you leave it alone. You change the subject. What are you doing this weekend? Hey, what did you do this weekend? And you just leave it alone. I think if it is something that is an outright lie, that directly affects you and your job and your relationships and whatever, I think that person does have a responsibility for themselves and for their reputation, right? Which is a valuable thing. Once that's ruined, it's really difficult to have a good reputation again. I think they do have a responsibility to try and track it down. Right. Not to talk to every single individual person, but I think they have a responsibility to prove in their behavior, in their dress, what they're saying about themselves, their work ethic, all these other things. Oh man, that couldn't be true. I know, Rachel, that can't possibly be true of her. Are we talking about somebody else? Because I've already demonstrated myself. You've already demonstrated yourself to not be that person. Right. And then secondly, I actually would do my best to track it down and find out where it started and have a very humbling conversation with them. Right. You said something earlier about to take the position of being the bigger person. Listen, it takes a lot of humility to be the bigger person. And it's like, if you approach, right? You see what I'm saying? It really does. Because if you actually are, if you have this like, oh, well, I'm going to be the bigger person, you're not the bigger person. As soon as you like, oh, I'm going to take the high road, and that's your attitude, that is not coming forward with a posture of maybe I am wrong.
Right.
So it takes a lot of humility to actually be the bigger person, right? Right. But that's the next thing that I would do. I would try and track it down as much as possible and have one of those conversations saying, hey, listen, this is something that's been going around. Tell me what happened. Did I misunderstand something somewhere? And have one of those conversations with them. Right.
Yeah. And it takes a way more mature person than I.
It's hard, man. None of this is easy. It is hard. Absolutely, it's hard, and it is uncomfortable. But you know what? There's just a number of situations where it's like, I am willing to sacrifice some of my comfort in favor of saving this thing. I love this thing more than I hate being uncomfortable.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Right? Even when the whole COVID thing was going around and it's like, oh, stay 6 feet apart and all this other stuff. There are some people that I love more than I hate being sick. When I have the flu, and again, there's lots of context with that. But there are some things that you have to be willing to sacrifice some of your comfortability for the sake of saving this thing. And by definition, that's what courage and bravery is. Okay. It's being afraid, it's being nervous, it's being uncomfortable, and still doing that thing anyway, because it is the right thing to do. By definition, that's what bravery and courage is.
So by addressing it, you are actually, in the terms of what you're saying, so by addressing it and facing the conflict instead of either, adding to the let's in this example, adding to the gossip mill, or just, kind of burying your head in the sand and not really saying anything. When you're going and you're resolving the conflict, you're actually building your confidence, building your courage. Oh, and I know you said it's not a skill set, but I feel like you're still building that communication muscle, if you will.
Absolutely.
And so you're not necessarily going out and engaging and trying to find conflict, but when it does come to you, that's how you build that communication muscle in terms of addressing it in a very professional manner, because I'm sure it can get wild, but addressing it in a very professional manner.
Yep, absolutely. One of the past presidents that we've had, and as soon as I look this up, I'm just going to kick myself for not remembering his name, said to walk softly, but carry a big stick.
Oh, yep. I've heard that, and I don't.
Right, you know who I'm talking about, right? I can't remember. It might have been Teddy Roosevelt, but I can't remember now.
I feel like that is it, but again,
yeah, it might have been Teddy. And the context of that is not saying, oh, well, walk softly, but actually be a jerk on the inside. That's not what that's saying. Walk softly means, and carry a big stick is like, no, you have this quiet inner confidence that you're just not going to be rattled by that much.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not that much that's going to intimidate you.
Okay.
And that wisdom really is what that is.
Mm.
And that's actually the definition of meekness, by the way. Meekness is not, oh, you poor little thing, and like this very small kind of person. Meekness is having the ability to defend yourself, but the wisdom to know when to do that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, because it's funny you say that, because I'm sure me and everyone else watching is like, yeah, meek is to be like, you know, like a meek mouse, like a mild mannered person, but that's okay. I like that definition better.
Yeah. And so this whole idea of walking softly, carrying a big stick, meekness, that whole thing is to know that you've got the confidence yourself. And sometimes developing confidence, sometimes that is a skill, right? It really is. It's something that requires practice to work on that muscle. But it's knowing that I'm just not going to be intimidated by that much. I know when I'm right, and I have enough confidence myself to approach you with the understanding that I might be wrong.
Okay. I like
Nobody
it.
talks about this stuff in school, man. Nobody talks about this
at all. They're just like what is it? Pythagorean theorem.
You know, or they say something that is just so counterproductive. Like, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words may never hurt me.
Words hurt.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure.
Right.
There's been plenty of words, especially, I know we're going back to the 14-year-old, but pretty sure there was words back then.
You know.
Hurt.
Right. Exactly.
But no, I think I agree with your sentiment. I think that we, in terms of like that building that courage, and sometimes we are intimidated, right? But at the end of the day, if you sit down with yourself and you say, okay, I might be a little bit intimidated by this person or situation. I have acknowledged that, but I'm still going to go ahead and fix or address whatever, because sometimes you can't fix the problem, right? Sometimes it's just, you know, this person is, what did you say, a horse's ankle?
Yeah, right. Horse's ankle.
And you're just not going to fix it. But like you said, your boundary is, I tried my best. I did what I could. I know that at the end of the day, I have flexed my courage, my confidence muscle, and, you know, addressed it in a way that I feel comfortable with, the what is it? The resolution, whether it was one or there wasn't, I feel okay with the outcome, and that's all I can do. And I like that perspective that you brought.
Yep. And the other thing I want to mention too, and again, this is very much in kind of the corporate big organization world. It's really important to have, for lots of reasons, but it's really important to have a good relationship with your leadership, with your supervisor, with your manager, that kind of thing. We're only responsible for like half of that relationship, right? But there also comes a time in conflict resolution where you should be able to rely on your upline, on your leadership to resolve something for you, especially if you're battling with somebody who's kind of out of your league, right? They're assistant to the whatever manager, like they're not the same as where you are in that company, right? Having the confidence to reach out to your manager, supervisor, whatever it is, whoever that is, say, hey, listen, I'm having an issue here. I'd really like some support. I'm not sure how to resolve this. Right. And a lot of that, again, is very context based, but more than once, like I have an issue with another advisor across campus who's not in my department. I'm going to kind of consider that person to be out of my league. Right. And I'm going to reach out to my boss saying, listen, this is what happened. I am doing my best here. Am I missing something? Am I just wrong? Do I need to like send flowers and a I'm sorry card to this person?
Right.
Right. To have an objective third party, not for the sake of gossip, but to truly have an objective third party with my best interests and the best interests of everyone involved, to have them step in and give some perspective is a really valuable thing. So I certainly don't want anyone to think like, oh, well, I just need to have more confidence and do all this by myself. It's like, well, no, community is necessary, whether it's in family or it's in work or whatever. So lean on that community too is really important.
Agreed. And I think that you bring up a good point, and I'm thinking I brought up the question before, entry versus senior, and
Sure.
I know a lot of people, they're gearing, they're ready to go, they're ready to move to that mid or senior level role,
Yeah.
but they still have that entry level mindset of
Right.
I in terms of entry level, when you think about it, they're like, oh, I don't really know what to do, or they're kind of combative in their conflict resolution skills, and they take that into, let's say, a supervisor or a manager role, and I'm like, ooh, you weren't ready for that just yet, because now either they don't know how to fight for you because they don't know how to fight for themselves.
Right.
And it turns into this whole thing of, okay, well, now I don't really like my supervisor because they're not helping me with, the bigger boss or the, adjacent boss. So now it becomes, now I have a conflict with not only that person, but I have a conflict with my supervisor. It turns into this whole thing.
And very, very quickly, with that kind of thing, which is way more normal than it should be. It's way more common than it should be. But that's how you get a toxic work environment where you feel like you're out on your own. Listen, I am trying my darndest to do the right thing here, to care about this job because I need this job to pay for my bills, right? To care about this job because that serves the students or the client or the customer best. But then you feel like you're out on your own. You don't have support from your coworkers because they're just working for their paycheck, right? You don't feel like you have the support from your leadership. So then what ends up happening? You're not going to win that battle. When everybody else around, and again, this is why it is difficult to establish and maintain a healthy work environment. But once you get it going, it does get easier, because then all of a sudden you wake up and you realize, oh my gosh, it's Monday. I haven't been dreading Monday morning all weekend.
Boom.
Right? What a wonderful place to be in. This is also kind of where they say, oh, well, dress for the job that you want. Okay, well, there's something to be said for that. But more importantly, clothe yourself with the position that you want to have. And it has nothing to do with what you bought at Macy's. Right? But again, it comes back to this whole posture thing. I can't emphasize this enough. Are you just generally polite to people? Are you participating in the gossip mill? Right? What are the things that I can be doing to create the environment that I would want to have if I was in a supervisor position for my employees? There's a really great speaker and author who's just such an inspiration to me. His name is Simon Sinek. Sinek is just incredible. And he says that authority has nothing to do with being in charge, and everything to do with taking care of the people who are in your charge.
Right.
That's what that actually means. Being in charge, right, is no, I have a responsibility to look after these people. So even if there's no one under you that you're a supervisor of, man, there are so many things that you can do to look after those people.
Right.
Right. To extend yourself, to clothe yourself with the personality, with the attributes, I should say is a better word for that, the characteristics of somebody who you would want to be your supervisor.
Right. And I feel like you can start that without even, like you're saying, you can start that without even being a supervisor.
Absolutely.
Because I think some people, if you just want to be in charge, then it's probably not for you.
Nope.
Because people are going to be your hardest challenge in terms of like supervising and managing. And you want to talk about conflict resolution and being a professional, they will test you time and time again.
Absolutely.
And if you're not ready,
yeah,
you're going to contribute to a toxic work environment. So I love that. I definitely want to make sure, because I could all of this I could talk about all day, but I want to make sure that we're getting to it's been amazing, but I want to make sure we're getting to your books, because I want to talk really quickly about those and let people know about your books before we wrap up. So can you tell us about the first one? You said was called Entitled to Empowered. Can you tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah, so this is I am so excited about this book, and it should be released next summer 24, which I'm so pumped, man. So entitled to empowered really dovetails beautifully into all the stuff that we've been talking about. Professionalism, saying thank you when someone has bent over backwards for you, sending them an actual thank you card. So of course this book is written in the context of, me being an academic advisor, working with students, that kind of thing. I can't tell you how many times I've had a student sit in this chair over here and say something like, oh, you have to fix this. This is your responsibility. I pay your salary. This is your job. Right? Okay.
Like
anyone who has worked anywhere for longer than about 5 minutes has probably heard that, whether they're in law enforcement, if they work at the Walmart, whatever it is, I pay your salary.
You're like, I need a raise then.
And so the culmination of the book is when someone transfers responsibility to someone else, by saying you have to fix this, this is your job, this is your responsibility. What they've done is a transfer of power. By definition, that is disempowering themselves and giving it to you.
Okay.
And they're giving it to somebody else. That is so damaging because all of a sudden, now they can't do anything about it. And what they think is they have said, oh, well, you have to do this, and well, the ball's in your court, etc. Well, what's the problem with the ball being in someone else's court? The problem is you can't do anything about it, and you've made yourself captive to somebody else's decisions.
Okay.
That is so damaging for so many different reasons. Instead of, so then the book kind of goes through, without giving away all my secrets, but the book kind of goes through what are some ways that people who are in administration, who are advisors, who are in a supervisory position, how can we help them? Again, not hammer time, right? Not bringing it, well, let me tell you here, right? Raise and all that, okay, right? Which is everybody's knee-jerk reaction. Well, I'm gonna tell you how it is. Right. That's not helpful. It's not professional of me to do that. And it's not going to change the student's perspective. In fact, it's going to make them dig in, which is exactly what I have seen in my practice. Right. Exactly. Again, this is a skill that we're all developing. But how do we, who are in a position of authority, taking care of the people in our charge, how can we identify the issue that they have, the logistical issue? I can't get into this class. So-and-so hasn't done their job, so I can't do mine, whatever. And actually bring them along and empower them again to show, listen, you have a gift and it's called responsibility. You can address this. I will help you. Right. I will help you do this. But don't ever give someone else your power over yourself. And this brings in all kinds of studies and research and self-authorship and self-advocacy is huge. Right. I spend a lot of time with my students talking about them. Sometimes it's encouraging them to just self-advocate for themselves, whether it's a roommate or it's a faculty member, whatever. But that's the context of the book. Moving somebody from entitled, right? Which is the mindset that they bring across, saying you owe me, you're responsible for, I pay your salary, whatever, and actually moving them to a position of empowerment where they can work with this stuff themselves. They can solve their own problems.
Love that. And I feel like that's working on, they are working on their problems, but that's really helping both parties because one, when you're self-advocating for yourself, you're building that skill, you're building that muscle. But the person that's also, like in your terms, when you're helping someone, you're also building up that muscle of, okay, now I am being that advocate for them in terms of now I'm building up my professionalism. I'm building up my conflict resolution skills because like you said, I know if someone said to me and if they were like, you fix it, I would be like, like,
right, exactly.
I'd be like, And if someone came at me, I would do the same exact thing.
Right.
Which would be to dig in and to just be like, oh, wait a minute, hold on now. So I think on both ends, both parties are really learning a valuable lesson. And I hope, guys, that you all are watching this when our book does come out in the summer, you guys definitely go and grab it because I'm sure it's going to have all types of tidbits and juicy things that we can incorporate into our corporate or student or just our lives in general.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited about it. It's one of those things that keeps growing. And my editor, who I send a couple of pages or a chapter to at a time, will say, "Listen, we really need to shorten this because nobody wants to read a 500-page book, right, anymore. So we really need to pare this back. It's not a novel." So there might be a sequel in my future. I don't know.
I was like, "Hey, just make it into a second book." I'm like,
yeah, there you go.
I'm like, unless you're world building like Harry Potter or Hunger Games, it's kind of hard to get someone to read.
I know, into one book, man, but I have so much to share.
So we need a second one. We need a second book. Speaking of second books, so your second book, I want to make sure we get this. The other one that we had briefly talked about was Bring Your Own Pen, right?
Yeah.
And that one was about your experiences as an advisor and conversations that you've had with students about life issues. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So I actually did a presentation I shared at a advisors conference a number of years ago, and shared on this topic, entitled To Empowered. I did the same thing, but with Bring Your Own Pen, I was really interested to know how students can become more aware of their surroundings. And it's not in the context like, opening the door or there's a bus coming your way, like not those kinds of surroundings, but if somebody is struggling with the door, are they just going to wait for that person to figure it out? Or are you actually going to help that person open the door? If someone is obviously looking around in their own bag for a pen to write something with, are you going to be prepared enough to offer them your pen? Right? This also, again, kind of flows into a lot of the professional conversation, right? So in my research, I found that people who carried things with them, like a writing utensil, right? Good old fashioned, big ballpoint pen, whatever, actually tend to be more prepared in every other area of their life.
Okay.
And so my question in this, mini research project that I did was, well, can you teach someone to be conscientious in the other areas by having them start with carrying a pen? And so the answer is actually yes.
Okay.
Right? The answer is actually yes. And it's preparedness in thinking ahead. Everything from driving, right? And looking not just at the light in front of you or the car that's in front of you, but are you looking 4, 5, 6 lights ahead of you or 4, 5, 6 cars ahead of you? Are you watching not just the crosswalk that's in front of you, but 2 crosswalks in front of you? Because if someone makes a mistake at that second crosswalk, it is going to affect you directly.
Right.
So you say you want to, and again, you say you want to come into college for this major. That's fantastic. Let's do that major. But what do you want to be when you're 30? And how does this become a stepping stone to that? So whether it's immediate decisions or it's long-term decisions, how can we get, and again, students is kind of this context, but it applies to everybody. How can we get folks to be more aware of their surroundings and more aware of their own realities? So, and what I've kind of woven through all of this are these kinds of conversations that I get to have with my students, right? But that's the idea behind Bring Your Own Pen. One of the things that I found is that so many different professional manuals, whether it was an Air Force pilot or a chef, or it was, all these different professions, and it's actually listed in those manuals to have a pen on them at all times. Because it's a demonstration, it's a physical manifestation of being prepared in general.
Right.
There's I think it's one butler's school that's left in Oxford, England.
Butler school, okay.
Right, can you believe it? There's still people who have butlers. My goodness, should we all be so lucky?
Right.
And there's a school where you can learn to be a butler. And one of the first things that's in their manual of this how to be a butler school is actually having a pen on you at all times. Actually, two pens, one for you and one to loan out to somebody else. So you are never without a pen. Is that interesting?
Yeah. I feel like I've heard that. I've definitely heard that like in the context of my own professional work life. Like like people that always bring a pen and then bring a pen and then something to write with. But the pen part, yeah, because you can grab a piece of paper anywhere, but the pen, like
right, exactly. Exactly. And some of it kind of dives into personality differences. What does it say? And again, we get into what are you saying about yourself, right? What are some of the snap judgments that we make when somebody pulls out a nice gold-plated fountain pen from their suit jacket? We're gonna make some assumptions about that person.
Right, exactly.
Versus the person who's dressed kind of sloppy, whatever, and they pull out a pen that's got a spoon taped on the end. I don't think they did that themselves. Maybe somebody else did that to keep people from stealing their pens.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
even some personality type things, you know?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so Entitled to Empowered comes out summer 24, which I'm very excited about. And then Bring Your Own Pen does not have a finished date yet, but it's in process. So we'll see.
Well, we're waiting on it. We're waiting on it. I love that. I think, and I mean, it's come full circle because we've talked about, you know, in terms of professionalism and conflict resolution. And I think both are super important when it comes to all stages of your career, whether you're a student looking for an internship or you're a senior level CEO looking to, you know, continue into, you know, that role. So I think what we've talked about here today is going to be very valuable for anyone at any stage of their career. And to just wrap it up, is there anything that you'd like to share with the people watching? And I know that you are an author, right? And then I can tell you eloquently speak, you're a speaker, but is there somewhere that they can look out for you, or is there something I could put in the description for them? Let us know.
So I have 2 Instagram accounts, which I'm happy to provide for you. They're a bit of a mouthful to say, so I'll just let the text do the talking. But the biggest thing that I would encourage people when it comes to things like self-advocacy and professionalism and conflict resolution is absolutely the best thing. The best place to just start is to be polite. Just be polite. Many of us refer to home training, right, as saying things like yes ma'am and no ma'am and please and thank you. Those things never go out of style. It's never a cliche. It's never looked down upon. Sending a thank you card is more valuable now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Send an actual thank you card. Send someone an actual birthday card, not just an Evite, not just a little digital thing. But anytime that you can have an in-person conversation with someone, do. A distant second is over the phone. Right. But especially in conflict resolution, or any professional situation, if you can have that person speak with you actually in person, then do. But yeah, be polite, be gracious to people, and send a thank you note.
Awesome. I love that. Be personable, guys. Be polite. If the world would only be polite. But thank you so much, Rachel. This has been a really good eye-opening conversation, guys. Make sure I'll put her information down in the description, and you guys can hit her up on Instagram and ask her any questions that you have. Make sure that you, if you do have any other questions, you can hit her up or you can put it in the comments, and I'll make sure she gets the questions. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all of that. So we're trying to grow this channel, grow the social media as well. You can find me at Boss Life in Progress, and I will put that in the description as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and I will be back next week with another episode of Is It Friday Yet? Thank you so much, Rachel, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Okay.